everybody, I'm Aaron Simmons. This is Philosophy for Where We Find Ourselves, October 24th, 2023. So I just got back from a week-long book tour, camping my way across the country. Did a little mountain biking while I was also on the road, and had a great time at this year's Theology Beer Camp, hosted by Homeward Christianity and a variety of other podcasts. A wonderful time, and that conference every year reminds me that we can think deeply together and have fun while doing it. Well, I'm back in town and didn't get a video posted last week because I think at the time I was somewhere in Kentucky, camping land between the lakes area and didn't have any cell signal. And so I thought I'd just take the week off, get back at it this week. And so before we dive in, make sure if you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, please do. Go over to jrnsimmons.com, get subscribed to my monthly newsletter, and please pick up a copy of Camping with Kierkegaard if you have not yet already. I would greatly appreciate it. Today, what I want to do is a simultaneous book recommendation and also thinking about a particular idea. So the book where these ideas come from is simply called When Bad Thinking Happens to Good People, and it's by Stephen Nadler and Lawrence Shapiro. I just finished teaching this book in my Intro to Philosophy class, had a great time. The students responded very positively to it. And the basic question of the book is, how can we turn to philosophy as a resource for helping us in a time of such social division, community breakdown, loss of trust? How can philosophy speak into such a difficult time? This book helps us to diagnose one of the underlying vices that actually basically lies behind the opposition, the division, and the difficulties that we face. They name this vice epistemic stubbornness. And epistemic stubbornness is simply the idea that when we hold some view, P say, right, we hold that P is true, we are epistemically stubborn such that we do not then seek out objections to P. We don't want to engage people who think that not P. We don't want to do the hard work that it takes to be responsible epistemic agents. It's way easier just to surround ourselves with people who reinforce what we already think is true. Now, this epistemic vice is a failure because as responsible epistemic agents, we should be invested in testing whether our ideas really do hold up. And we do this by considering objections, by surveying the arguments for and against. And this notion of being epistemically responsible is something that would basically eschew any commitment to being stubborn. Stubbornness is at odds with being responsible believers. When we hold that P, we don't just think it's true, we also are invested in the idea that the best reasons support P. In other words, we think we're justified in believing that P is true. So epistemic stubbornness is a vice because it basically means we no longer care about justification. We don't want to do the hard work that justification demands. Now, you might say, all right, fine and good, but we don't have to be philosophers in all areas of our life. Their claim is that when we engage in epistemic stubbornness and allow that vice to show up in our world, this almost always will lead from bad thinking to bad behavior. When we are not epistemically responsible, we are also not responsible social beings. We are not committed to doing the hard work of thinking well about what moral life requires. So when we are epistemically stubborn, we tend to be ethically inhospitable. In other words, we are narrow and insular in the way that we consider the world to look. And our role in the world then becomes one that tends to slide pretty easily into a very egoistic and closed mode of interacting with other people. So epistemic stubbornness leads to a kind of ethical closure, and this ultimately leads then to a deep lack of trust in our social institutions, because unless we agree with people, we don't think that they can be moral. This is a deep, deep problem, because if we have disagreements, we should be able to recognize that those disagreements are nested in different argumentative support. But if we've abandoned a concern for argumentative support, then our disagreements, the only way we know how to make sense of them is as reflecting a deep moral failure. So those with whom we disagree now are not just irrational, but they are immoral, they are unjust, and they are to be opposed. Enter the division that we face. Enter the radical, oppositional, and problematic space where conspiracy theories start to take hold, where we tend to think that only people who are reinforcing what we already think are responsible believers. And this is very, very, very dangerous, not just for our social life, but also for our democratic institutions that depend on us being responsible epistemic agents and therefore morally humble enough to realize that we might misunderstand some stuff about the world. We need each other. Let's work together in order to make things better. What's the solution to this mess? Well, in the book, they suggest cultivating wisdom. And wisdom is something different than just knowledge. It's not just, adding up a whole bunch of other facts that we now hold to be true. It's a matter of engaging in philosophy as a way of life. We develop wisdom when we are reflectively invested in trying to live towards truth, beauty, and goodness. When we are actively seeking out objections, actually wrestling with the difficult work that justification demands, and we are humble enough, hospitable enough, that we really do recognize we need those with whom we disagree. And we need them to be good at their views so that we can genuinely be improved by them if the arguments in fact demand it. So, avoid stubbornness, avoid immoral behavior as a result, and cultivate wisdom and philosophy as a way of life in order to try to respond to these deeply troubling facets of our contemporary world. It's a book well worth reading. These ideas I find exceptionally helpful and encouraging for how to navigate where we are. I hope they help you as well. I'll see you next time, unless a piano falls on our heads.